Hello and welcome back to Advanced Animation Application. Today, we are doing a deep dive into physical animation in Unreal Engine. Now, what is physical animation? Physical animation is kind of a midpoint between complete Ragdoll physics and keyframed animation. That's it, goodbye, see ya. Physical animation is used in video games such as Grand Theft Auto 4 and 5, Red Dead Redemption 2, games like Totally Accurate Battle Simulator, more kind of simulation games like Xanima, and VR extravaganzas like Blade and Sorcery use it to a very questionable effect. Let's take Grand Theft Auto or Red Dead Redemption for example. When you hit someone with a car or a horse, they kind of go into this half ragdoll state where they're still physically reacting to, you know, their surroundings. They bump their head on the curb or a rock or something, and you can see it, you know, actually hit it, but they're still animated. They're still trying to, you know, put their arm out to break their fall, or they're kind of curling up in a ball, or they're just flailing around like crazy. It can also be used for things like hit reactions. Let's say I have an animation of my character like holding a weapon like this, and then I also have one holding a different weapon like this, and I have all of these different animations and poses and stuff, but I don't want to have to keyframe hit reactions for every single one of them, you know, like left, right, backwards, forwards, in the gut, in the back. For every single one of these, it just balloons out of control really rapidly. What we could do instead is actually half simulate the body of the character when they get hit, and the physical animation will do everything for us. We can also use physical animation to simulate things like a character being tired or being like rabid, like a zombie or something, where we can kind of relax the muscles of a character and still have them do an animation, or at least attempt to do an animation. So, you know, we could say this character, their right arm is injured, and so we're going to set its physical animation properties to be, you know, at a particular strength level, and it's going to be simulated but trying to do the animation that we're giving it. And that would result in, let's say they were trying to do a punch or something, it would kind of look really floppy and like they can't really hold up the weight of their own arm. So that's another way that we can use physical animation really effectively. So, without any further ado, let's get stuck straight into it. Oh, sorry, I was watching a course about public speaking and delivery skills on Skillshare, who, coincidentally, happen to be the sponsor of today's video. Let's face it, you are watching my video for one reason. You want to learn how to make a great game. If you are an aspiring indie games developer, you need to know, and I'm saying you need to know, how to make videos. Making videos is probably one of the only ways that you can really communicate and start building an audience. So I've personally been going through Alex Lyon's course, Communication Skills Become More Clear, Concise, and Confident. You can probably tell by my voice that I've actually started employing some of his techniques. Skillshare would be the perfect place to learn video production, so making your own YouTube videos, devlogs, showcasing your game to the world, and all of the classes available through Skillshare are kind of like my videos, except they actually put effort into them. So they're very easy to watch, very easy to learn from, very nice to look at. So do both of us a massive solid and get your free month of Skillshare in the description below. Okay, so how do we set up physical animation? Well, what we will do is we will right-click our library, whatever this bar is called, content browser. We're going to create a new blueprint class, and that is going to be an actor component. This is a component that gets attached to an actor. It doesn't exist in the world. It's just a little bundle of code that we're going to be using on a character. Now, the reason I like to do this, we're just going to call this tutorial physical anim comp, whatever. The reason I like to do it this way is because you can then have all of your physical animation related stuff in this little bundle of code, and you can put it on characters that need it, you can not put it on characters that don't need it, It just makes it a lot easier to manage, rather than put all this code in your base character class and literally everything from then on inherits that code when it doesn't need to. The other nice thing is that whenever you're doing, an interaction with something, let's say something takes damage, you can just use the get component by class function, and then we can actually just look for tutorial physical anim comp and then do something of the component if it finds one. Now, this component is completely blank, so what we're going to do is on begin play, we're going to add component by class. We're going to add it to the owner of this component that we're creating, and the class is physical animation component. Now, this is the Unreal physical animation component, and this is, as its name suggests, a component that handles physical animation. But since we want to add our own functionality, we're going to create this component at runtime and store its reference as a variable. And then the last thing that we need to do is we need to actually set a skeletal mesh, or a skeletal mesh, as we say in my area, that the physical animation component is going to use. So what we're going to do is we're going to get the owner, we're going to get component by class, or alternatively, if you have a character class or something that you use, you can go cast to, I use my own class called living being. We could just chuck this here if we wanted. I actually do this cast usually in like a parent component, and we can say as living being get mesh, since this is derived from the character class, and we can just plug that in there. Bam, compile. One extra thing we will actually want to do is get this mesh, and we want to promote it to a variable. So let's just put that there. And now our physical animation component is set up and ready to be used. It's as simple as that. So first up, let's just create an event, custom event. This one is called, let's call this toggle physical animation. What we're going to do when we toggle physical animation, we will need the mesh component itself and the physical animation component. We're going to simulate bodies below simulate physics. The in-bone name, we're going to make literal name. And we're going to type pelvis. And then what we aren't going to do is tick include self, because we want to simulate everything but the pelvis. The pelvis, 99% of the time, you want the pelvis to be not simulated, because it is kind of the anchor point of the character. If it was to simulate, then the character would literally just fall to the ground and they wouldn't move along with, the character movement component or anything like that. We're going to click new simulate, tick. So let's just take this little bit that we've done so far. Let's go to our player character. I'm just going to go keyboard R, just very hacky way of, doing debug letters and whatnot. We're going to add the component tutorial physical anim comp. We're going to drag that into here, and then we're going to call the toggle physical animation function when we press R. Fantastic. Okay, so let's see what happens. If I am running around with my beautiful character here, and I press R, it's going to completely simulate. There is no physical animation going on here yet. This is just purely a ragdoll. This might be what you're going for, but I highly doubt it. So what we want to do instead is actually apply physical animation profile below from the physical animation component. The body name is pelvis. Oh, not pelivs, pelvis. The profile name is something that we're going to set up shortly after this little section. Now, I already have one set up called hit reaction profile. We are not going to include self. Clear not found. If true, bodies without the given profile name will have any existing physical animation settings cleared. If false, bodies without the given profile name are left untouched. I think we want to keep that false. Fantastic. Now, if we go back in and we hit R, you can see that now my character is kind of ragdolling. They're kind of flopping about. They look really tired. This is like me before 2 o'clock in the afternoon every day. This is what I look like. And you can see that the running animation is still happening, except it's kind of half ragdolled. And if I go into combat mode and I start punching, you can see my character is really, really struggling to hit anything effectively. So this is physical animation at a base level. So we've got animation, and we've got, oh fuck, this isn't gonna work. We've got physical simulation. Oh, what the fuck am I doing? And then they combine to make physical animation. It's fucking awesome. So let's just take a quick look at some of the other settings that we'll be using in this component to do, you know, whatever we want to do. There is, in the physical animation component, a function called set strength multiplier. So if we set the strength to be 0, then we're fully flopped up. If we set this to be 100 times whatever it, you know, whatever our profile was, then you can see that, well, it doesn't really, it can't, okay, what the fuck is going on here? Then you can see that it is doing some real whack shit. Oh my lord. Now, the reason it's doing whack shit is because I'm overdriving the motors to the extreme. It just doesn't like it, so... But this can be really useful if you just need a little bit more push out of, you know, your profile. Although we will look at some of the weaknesses of using this, namely that you can't specify from a particular bone chain for this to be, you know, set to. It's a global strength multiplier. The main thing I use this for is to exit physical animation. So as we're exiting physical animation, I'll drive this up to like 10 or something so that it can blend out smoothly. The other setting that is crucial to physical animation being useful is set all bodies below physics blend weight. Or you could just do set all bodies. This one kind of a bit more flexible. So if we make a literal name, like literally make a name, this is pelvis, we can now set the physics blend weight, 0 being there is no physics blended, 1 being there is, it's fully physics. Now, really important thing to note, and this can be kind of hard to grasp, this is very different to the set strength. Like, you might think, oh, this is fully physically simulated and this is not fully physically simulated, like what's the difference? So let's just say we put this at 0.5 and we don't apply any physical, you know, animation profile below. So this is going to be fully floppy ragdoll mode, but we're only going to blend 0.5 of that amount. So if we hit play and we ragdoll, you can see that this character is kind of, see how there's like these weird motions where the arms are kind of flopping about all over the place, really weird. It isn't like half simulated, if that makes sense. This is still fully simulated, but it's just halfway between the animation and, you know, the fully simulated whatever's going on. The only thing that we want to use the blend weight for, or the better way to think of it is like the alpha of a lerp between the keyframed animation and simulated, you know, ragdoll, whatever. The only thing we want to use this for is entering and exiting our physical animation state. So let's say our character gets hit in the back of the head and, you know, they're kind of dazed and they're like flopping around like this for a bit and we're still running. If we were to just set, you know, stop simulating bones, it would just snap immediately to this position again and it would look absolutely terrible. So what we can do towards the end of our hit reaction or our physical animation state is quickly lerp from 1 through 0.5 to 0 and it will smoothly transition, and then once we reach 0, that's when we say, okay, we're not simulating anymore, you know, whatever. Now, actually turning off physical animation is quite important because this can be quite expensive when you do it en masse, you know, like if you had every single character, and all of them were, you know, doing physical animation, simulating whatever, all at the same time, things could get a little bit messy. So when you're not using physical animation, you'll want to turn it off. You'll want to set simulate bodies on the mesh to false. So that is a very brief overview of how to set up a physical animation component, why we put it in its own little, you know, component that spawns a component, and also what the main functions that we're going to be calling are. So the next thing that we're going to cover is setting up a physics asset. Now, if you're using the default, you know, Unreal mannequin, it'll have a physics asset already ready to go. Some of the constraints might not be perfect, so, you know, just reference this video if you want to tweak them. But even with that physics asset already set up for you, you will need to set up a physical animation profile. So when we import a skeleton for the first time, or a new character or whatever, it will automatically generate a physics asset. This is a physics asset. Basically what this is the simple collision for a scaly mesh. So you can see each kind of bubble here, these are like capsules, very easy to compute collision for. These are all assigned to 1 bone each, and you can see some of them are a little bit too buffy by default, and it's basically going to be our job to fix them up. If we hit simulate here, you can see that, you know, it does function, it does work, and if we shift right click, we can, you know, drag this around, we can throw it around, see what it's doing. So you might be thinking, well, that seemed to, you know, ragdoll properly, what's the big deal? What needs to be done to it? Well, if we look a bit closer, you can see that when this fella flops onto the floor, there's going to be like gaps here because this big pelvis collider is too big, basically. And also, if you're doing any mesh accurate collision for your characters, so, you know, you want to know, oh, my character got hit in the arm or something, rather than, you know, just hitting the capsule. Basically, any game that isn't, you know, a kind of hack and slash RTS type thing, then you will want these to be as accurate as they can be. How do we do this? Well, we can simply click on these, and by using the keys W, E, and R, just like in the you know, editor window, we can actually just scale these by dragging. We're just going to go through here, and I'm going to tidy up these so that they are all appropriate sizes. Keep in mind that you can have bodies overlapping with one another, because later on we can specify which bodies can collide with which other bodies. So we can say this shin shouldn't collide with the foot or this one, but the shin should collide with, you know, the chest and the arms and all that kind of stuff. Now, this one here, spine 03, this one's a bit of a nightmare. We're just gonna fix it up as well. Make all its rotations snapped to the nearest 90 degrees. It's also not in the middle, so if we go to the center of it, this is actually the center relative to the bone that it's representing. If you want to snap something to the center, just set this back to 0. It looks like spine 1 didn't actually receive a capsule by default. So what we're going to do, we're going to go up to options. We can go to show all bones, go to spine 01. We're going to add, replace bodies. And this is going to automatically constrain this to the adjacent bones. So that's just a very handy little tool to add a bone that didn't get generated automatically. Now, of course, you don't actually need a collider for every single bone. I just find it handy because if we have more colliders, we can actually get more bone names from our hit results. So when a line trace or a collision hits a scaly mesh, there's actually an option to get the hit bone name. And that hit bone name actually comes from this physics asset. So, you know, one thing that you'll notice if you've ever done like collisions and stuff is that, you know, you'll never get a collision that'll say, oh, I hit bone, you know, finger, pinky, bone number 3 or something. It's always just hand, and that's because usually we don't give fingers their own individual colliders, because that would be very expensive. It'd also just lead to more jank and whatnot. I guess if you're doing like a VR game or a VR application or something, then giving the fingers individual colliders might be something that you would do, but for, you know, 99% of projects, you would just give the hand its own collider. And when we actually look at this, you can see that this collider here is assigned to the hand, so any bones beyond that will just be completely stiff. They'll just be following whatever the keyed animation is doing. Now, there's a lot of stuff going on here. There's a big thing, and there's no big thing over here. This is the clavicle, which is actually worth doing a collider for. I'm also going to delete the entirety of that arm over there, because what we can do, let me just get this chest bone, shrink you in a little bit. Yeah, it's good enough. What we can do is we can actually mirror these doobly-doos. So if we right-click on this, we can go mirror, and it's going to add that exact size and position over here. It's also going to add the constraints over here. That's why I've just deleted one half of it, so we can focus on this side. One thing that I'm going to do with the hand, I'm actually going to go to right-click, add shape, add box, and then delete the capsule. Usually I'll do this for the feet as well, but I haven't done it yet in this case. Cool, and now I'm going to flatten this out this way, and that should be just about enough. Right, and then I'm going to get the clavicle, and we're going to add replace body. Add / replace body. I'm going to rotate this to how I want it. So this is our shoulders, basically. Now, the reason I put the shoulders in here is because the shoulders are actually... I know it kind of doesn't seem like it, but shoulders are actually like one of the key parts of getting like natural movement. These actually move like a ton more than you would really give them credit for. Doing my exercise. So when it comes to actually ragdolling or physical animation, you know, if these weren't able to move, then a character that's ragdolling wouldn't actually be able to put their arms above their head like this. Because when you do this, you're actually moving your clavicle all the way up vertically. If you were to try and keep this still, you can't actually get past here. Any arm movement above this point, above this angle, is clavicle movement. Let's see, this chest bit here. Okay, this one definitely needs to come out a bit. Keep in mind, this is like an actual historically shaped breastplate, so the character's body is actually like here. So, you know, I might want to make a different physics asset for when this type of armor is being worn, where it has, you know, a bigger chest or something, just so the collisions are more accurate. Okay, so to finish up this, we're going to click on our clavicle, our upper arm, lower arm, and a hand. Then we're going to right-click them and click mirror. And I also went ahead and deleted one side of the leg and also replaced the foot with a cube. So we're going to do the same thing here. Select them all, mirror. And that's our, I guess, basis of a physics asset. Now, if you hit simulate, then you can see this guy just flops down and, you know, physics, wow. What we might do is go to character, go to bones, and show selected only, just to kind of get rid of them because they're fucking annoying. So this next part here is where things get really interesting, aka frustrating, and that is setting up the constraints for these physics bodies. If we like generated a new shape or whatever, it's gonna have an omnidirectional joint by default. So if I, let's say over here, if I just click this bone and then simulate selected, so that's gonna simulate whatever we selected and anything below it, you can see that this hand joint just, you know, if I left click it, yeah, you can see that it you can see that it is like free flowing. It's got absolutely no constraint to it. It is just doing its thing. It can bend in any direction as far as it wants, and it can also twist in any direction, you know, whichever direction it wants. and that's because it's using this omnidirectional, it's like a ball joint, basically. What we want to do is set all of these to limited. And so this is going to, if I just simulate this one, you can see that it has a limit on how far it can twist around. So twist would be this direction, like this way. As you can see, the hand actually doesn't have much twist to it. So it is always good to, it's a good practice to actually get your body and kind of measure how much, you know, things can twist individually. So obviously, as a fellow human being, I can twist my hand around like this. But most of that comes from the arm shin. This one. The arm shin. But it's always a good idea to let the constraints go a little further than they should. Basically, a good starting point is just to set every bone to limited in every direction. And we can just, you know, set this to limited, and then we can just click on all these and mirror them, and that will fix it on this side. Yeah, very good, very good. Good to you and your good something merry Santa. And I'm just going to set this to limited. So if we select, let's just say spine 1, and we go simulate bodies below, then you can see that we have simulation. Woo! Woohoo! Now, what we're gonna do is we are going to set this so that it has semi-realistic constraints. A little rule of thumb, like my kind of starting values are 25, 25, and 10 for the twist. This kind of just seems to work, you know, decent in most cases, at least as a starting point. Okay, so as we're setting up these damned constraints, we want this to be able to, you know, reach up here, but we don't want it to be able to go back this way. Now, in order to rotate a constraint, you need to hold down Alt and then rotate it. And you can see here that this point here now has a different, there's two red lines, basically. Why doesn't it just do this by default? I have no fucking clue. It's just a thing. Just remember, whenever you rotate a constraint, make sure you hold down the Alt key. Otherwise, this will not work. So what we'll do, we'll actually just get the twist and the other bits, and we'll just do this. We'll test this out. That's bloody terrifying. But if we now Alt drag this like this, you can see that it now stops when it gets to this point, and it's going to allow it to go all the way forward here. So remember, hold Alt, and we do this, and we might give it a little bit of extra room here, just for safety, you know. And then as we drag it up here, that looks just about how it should. So that's how you rotate a constraint. And this is really important for things like, you know, elbows, and also for, you know, the knees. All right, so I've finished tweaking all of this stuff. It's all as good as it's gonna get. And I'm just I've deleted the other arms and legs and whatever, and I'm just gonna mirror them now. Another really good way to continue testing your Ragdoll is actually go to Physics and go Gravity Scale 0. And if we click on the pelvis, hit Simulate, then you can see that this fella is, you know, in 0 gravity. And this is a really good way to see whether there are any completely unnatural poses. So for example, I can see that these legs are actually going back too far. Here, this thigh is just going fucking crazy. What the hell? So a little issue that I came across is sometimes when you're mirroring the bodies, one of them will actually be, well, just straight up not correct. Now, this seems to only happen when you're mirroring something that is connected to a body, and the thing that, you know, the mirror version of it is also connected to that same body. So to me, it happened up here as well with the clavicles joining to spine 3. So all we need to do to fix this is make sure that we're 90-degree snapping up here, and also make sure that we're rotating in world space. And then we're just going to hold Alt and we're going to rotate this 180 degrees. And now, okay, that was the wrong axis. Whoops. Okay, 180 degrees. That was also the wrong axis. Oh, well, last time is the charming time. The red axis. There we go. Now they're perfectly together. And my cats are fighting one another. Cats, can you be quiet? I'm trying to do a video. Alright, so my physics asset is set up. I'm not going to wait for yours to be set up. Now, if I hit simulate, that looks pretty damn good to me, if I does say so myself. Now, what is next is to set up the collisions, so the self collisions. Basically, all you need to do is click on a body, and you can see anything that is grey when you have a body selected is something that it isn't going to collide with, but anything that is blue is something that it is going to collide with. So if we hit the hand here, you can see the hand is colliding with nothing. So if I was to do this, then you'll see that I can actually move this hand, you know, inside and around our character. However, if I click on the hand and I shift click on the leg and right click on the body and we go collision, enable collision. Now you can see that this is blue. So if I hit simulate now, then you can see that the hand is now colliding with the thigh. One thing that you don't want to do is make two things that are overlapping collide with one another, because this will result in, well, I may as well just show you. Yeah, some really wacky jiggling, because these two bodies are within one another and they're also trying to depenetrate from one another over and over, but then the constraints are pulling them back in, and it's just a never-ending battle of depenetration. Don't do that. What I would suggest is selecting all bodies and disabling collision on all of them. Click on the hand, collision, enable collision all, and then disable collision with the, you know, the arm and stuff that we don't want it to collide with. So I'm just going to click this one. We're going to click collision, enable all, and then collision, disable that one. So now if we simulate this arm, the hand will collide with everything, which is pretty important. I'm going to do the same with the forearms. Then I'm also going to do the same with the feet and the shins. So I'm just about finished here, but one thing I'm going to do is make every second body piece collide with one another. The reason I'm doing this is to prevent like really tight squishing. So if we enable collision here, and I've just enabled it here, and we select the spine one and the other bits there, you can see that because this is really kind of stretched back, this collider here is now colliding with this. Looks good, feels good, is good. Now that we have our physics asset set up and rigged and constrained and all that good stuff, the next part of this is going to be setting up our physical animation profile. So, in this corner down here, we're going to select everything. We're going to hit new, and the current profile, we're going to call this, I'm going to call this strong. The reason I'm going to call this strong is because we're going to use this for our hit reactions and stuff, where we don't necessarily want the character to be flopping around too much, but we still want them to be able to, you know, get affected by physics and whatnot. So I'm going to assign all of the selected, I want the foot as well. I'm going to assign all of these to the profile strong. And now you can see here where it says physical animation, we have these options. So we have our is local simulation checkbox. We have orientation strength, angular velocity strength, position strength, velocity strength, max linear force, max angular force, blah, 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 blah. There we go. If we hit simulate, nothing's changed, and that's because we need to actually tell this, hey, like, what strength values does this profile have? So let's just select everything, and into orientation strength, let's just put 1,000, and we'll put 1,000 into angular velocity strength. Then if we hit simulate, you can see that this fella is trying to maintain that position. So what we could do, if our hands and stuff are kind of where we want them to be, we could just, you know, adjust the spine constraints to be more powerful. So now our fella is standing upright, and I can still, you know, push him around. We could hit him. We could do what we want. You can actually go to physics, poke. Where's poke? Poke strength. I'm going to put this up to like 5,000. And if we hold control and left click, then we poke him. So this might be what a hit reaction looks like if he got hit in the face or something. So another thing, let me just go through here and reset all of these back to 0. One thing to note is this position strength value. This will only work, same with the velocity strength. These will only work if this is not a local simulation. So local simulation means each bone is simulating relative to its parent bone. So, you know, this one is trying to maintain this rotation relative to this bone here. Whereas if this is unticked, I'm going to untick it on the hand, then this is actually going to be trying to reach the position that it would be in the animation regardless of what its parent bones are doing. So if I set this to 10,000 and we simulate here, you can see that this hand is trying to maintain that position that it's supposed to be in, regardless of what these bones are doing. And this can help prevent things from flopping too much. So, you know, like our issue before where the head is kind of flopping back too much, if we made this non-local and put the position strength up to like 10,000 or something, then when we simulate, the head will be pulling all of this stuff up to that point, you know? So maybe we'll put this down to like 1,000 and we hit simulate. And yeah, you can kind of see that this head is acting like almost like a helium balloon in a way. And the rest of the body's just getting dragged along with it. However, this can get really janky when you're doing like ragdoll physics. So you want to like knock a character over and you want them to kind of flop on the ground. This will give you a very bad time. So you could make a second profile. So we could get, you know, select everything, new profile. This one could be called the Ragdoll profile, and we assign everything to that one. And we could just simply give the head a local simulation in this profile. And then in our physical animation component that we set up, where it says set profile from bone below body something something, we would just say, okay, well, when we enter Ragdoll, we're going to use the Ragdoll profile for all bodies, and that would fix that issue. So you can, you know, set up multiple profiles, and it is recommended to set up multiple profiles for different things. So if you do want to use that world space, you know, kind of have the ends of the appendages drag the rest of it along, that would be the way that you do it. Come here. Hello, my girl. Well, it looks like Girl Cat has joined us for the rest of the video. Now, we can go to preview animation, and we can actually do this, but then I'm going to select these, and we're going to hit simulate and preview animation. We're going to switch to here. This is our walk animation, and it's being simulated. Obviously, ignore the feet. They're bound to be a little bit weird because of the friction and that kind of stuff. But this is kind of holding pose decently well. If we go to a run animation, then you can see, you know, he's kind of chugging along a little bit. It's not perfect, but it's, you know, there's some resemblance there. This would be perfect for, you know, a drunk character or something. So it is important to test the simulation with animations as well. God, who needs to motion capture breakdancing when you can just do this? Look at him go. Bust a move. Alright, so that is our physics asset set up, ready to go. We know how to make a profile. We've done all the constraints. We've set up all of the, you know, the forces and stuff that they use to blah, 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 blah. It is time to put some of what we've been working on into practice. Yeah! Alright, let's do it. So, first thing we're going to do is a hit reaction. Let's just go to him, and in here, we're going to give him our tutorial physical anim component. Very cool. And in this component that we made just before, I'm going to have to find mine. Here it is, physical anim component tutorial thingo. What we want to do is get our tick function. We're also going to make sure that our component isn't ticking by default. We're going to have an event called hit reaction. We've made a custom event called hit reaction. It needs an input of hit result. Let's just call this hit. Very cool. This goes down into there. So what we do when this happens is we set the component to start ticking, and we increment the hit reaction time remaining. This isn't actually time necessarily. This is just a value that goes up, like we set it upwards, and then it will lerp back down towards 0 over time. Then what we're going to do is we're going to apply a physical animation profile below pelvis, not including self. Then we're going to set all bodies below simulate physics. New simulate, yes, simulate. Then what we're going to do is we're going to add an impulse after we've set this to simulate physics. Now, little thing that I do is if the hit hits the pelvis, then hit the spine instead. This is just a little thing to prevent warnings that can pop up. If you hit the pelvis and it wasn't simulating, there would be a little warning. Not an error or anything, just a warning saying this would need to be simulating physics if you want to add impulse, blah, 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 blah. Very cool. So the impulse needs a bone name. So we're getting the bone name from the hit result that we're going to be passing into this hit reaction event. And it needs an impulse, which is a velocity. So it's a direction and magnitude of that direction. The way we're getting this is we're getting the trace start and the trace end and minusing the start from the end. That's going to give us the distance, or sorry, not the distance, but the vector between the start and the end of the trace. Then we're going to normalize that, which is going to get that same direction and make it a magnitude of 1. Then we're going to multiply that by big number. This is like your strength value of the hit or something. You could base this off whatever variable you want. And then we're going to add an impulse. And then on tick, what we're going to do is we are going to set on tick the hit reaction time remaining towards 0. We're also going to minus this small number from it. That's just so it actually reaches 0 at some point. Otherwise, it will just tend towards 0 and never actually reach it. After this is done, we actually check, is this less than or equal to 0? If it is equal to 0, we know that the hit reaction has finished. So we're going to set the value to 0 just for safety. Then we set all bodies below simulate physics to false. And then we stop the component ticking. Very cool. However, if this isn't true, what we're going to do is we're going to set the blend weight to whatever the hit reaction time remaining is. You know, this might be at like 2, and then it will come down to 1, and this will still be like fully simulated, whatever. And then as it approaches that last little stretch, that last bit from 1 to 0, it will lerp back the blend weight, or the alpha between fully simulated and not simulated at all. It will just lerp that back to, you know, the original position that it should be in due to the animation. So this is just there to, you know, exit from the physical animation without any like stuttering or anything. So what we can do now, I'm just gonna go to literally anything. I might just get a projectile or something. When it hits something, all I'm gonna do is we're just gonna get whatever it hit. I'm gonna say cast to, oh, actually no, get component by class. We're going to look for tutorial physics anim comp, and we're just going to call the hit reaction function or event. Same thing. And then into the hit, we're just going to plug whatever the hit of this line trace is. This could be a line trace. This could be like an overlap or like a hit result or something. It could just be, you know, whatever you want it to be. So if we go here, we're going to press P. I'm printing on the side here what the like remaining value for the hit reaction is. So you can see as it goes from 0 to 1, he actually lerps back to his original position like that. And so you can see that the blend between physics and not physics is seamless. There's no like jerking or anything. You could use like an S-curve function to smooth this out a bit more. It's probably something that I'll do. And the reason that I like doing it this way is that you can keep adding to it while it's in the middle of happening, rather than a timeline which would reset every time you hit it and look really janky. This is the way I like to do it. You can also kind of differentiate between different like hits with this. So like if they got like really hit in the face with a hammer or something, you could just say bam, add like 5 seconds or whatever, and it would look like they're kind of dazed and all that kind of stuff. All right, the second little example that we're going to be looking at is having a character ragdoll, but then self-preserve. So put their arms out in front of them or put their elbows out behind them if they're falling over backwards. Currently, I don't have this set up on this character. I'm not going to be going over how to like exit ragdoll smoothly like this. It's a little bit too out of scope for this video. I only have limited time. I am happy to go over how to, you know, exit ragdoll smoothly like this. I just use the method that is in the ALS free, locomotion system thingo. If you just dive into that, study, you know, try and dig through the absolute monolithic anim BP in that session and try and find out where the ragdoll stuff is, you can basically just kind of copy that one for one and get pretty good results. So what we need in order for this to work, basically we need an enter ragdoll function. That's part of my action system. We set tick enabled. We're going to set a boolean is ragdoll to be true. Then we apply a physical animation profile below, set the movement mode to none just so we can't override the movement of the ragdoll and stuff. We also set the collision of the capsule to false or no collision. And then we set all bodies below simulate physics, including the pelvis. That's important. Just as a safeguard, we also set the physics blend weight to 1, so it's fully physically simulated, just because this might have been a different value because of the hit reaction and stuff. And then basically on tick from that point, all we need to do is get the socket rotation of the pelvis in the X direction. So this is the ragdoll pelvis roll. And the other thing that you'll need is the ragdoll's distance from the ground. And you can do this with a line trace, however you want. I'm not going to hold your hand through literally everything in your life. What we want to do now is in our anim blueprint, we are going to have in our anim graph, near the very end of our anim graph, like literally right before we go into the output pose, we're going to have a blend poses by bool, is ragdolling is the boolean, and into the true pose, we are going to have a blend space called ragdolling preservation poses. Now, on this, we will need to set the ragdoll pelvis direction and the distance from the ground. This blend space looks like, when we're above 400 units from the ground, it looks just like a mid-air flailing animation. But then if we're close to the ground, 100 units from the ground, it will look like this if we're falling backwards, this if we're falling forwards, and, you know, sideways or something if we're falling sideways. Very cool. So I'm just quickly going to get a reference to, I'm going to get the Prismatica physical animation component. This is my one I prepared earlier. And then all we need to do is promote this to a variable. This is called physical animation component. Hit compile. We're going to go back to our thingo. We're going to use property access. We're going to go to physical animation component because we just got a reference to it before. We're going to get the ragdoll pelvis roll. Bam. And we're going to do the same thing here. Physical animation component. We're going to get the ragdoll distance from ground and plug them in. Fantastic. And now when we're in the ragdolling state, it's going to be doing this animation. And because we're doing physical animation, it's going to actually, you know, physically simulate it. So if we are running and we ragdoll, then our character, if they fall forward, will put their hands out in front of them. If we fall backwards, they will put their arms out behind them. I know that's not safe falling practice, but I know neither of these actually are a safe falling practice, but it's kind of just instinctually what people would do. So yeah, we can keep doing this. You can see that it always does the right thing. That looked a bit painful, but, you know, again. And then, you know, even if we're up in the air, he'll still put his hands out in front of him. If we, like, I don't know, follow backwards, you can see it just works. It just works. Now, if we were to be really high up in the air and we ragdoll, you'll see that it'll do this flailing animation, and then at the very last second, if he had time, he would have put his arms out in front of him. Luckily, they survived the fall, because we need them for one more demonstration. Lastly, but not leastly, we're basically just going to do a repeat of what we did at the very start of the video. So let's just do another event called tired state. All we're going to do here is set a animation profile below. Then we are going to set all bodies simulate physics. And then we're going to set the blend weight to some value. Now, what you would want to do in this case is you'd actually want to get this strength multiplier. This is probably one of the only places I would use this strength multiplier. So you would want your animation profile to be pretty strong to begin with. So, you know, you'd want it to be, I don't know, maybe in the 5,000s or something, so that the animation basically looks exactly how it should, as if it was keyframed. And then all you would need to do is get your, you know, health component or stamina component or whatever you wanted to use to drive this thingo. And any time that you updated it, you would call this event and you would have some variable that would be like, I don't know, some math formula. Maybe it would be like current stamina divided by max stamina, and that would be the strength multiplier. So 1 being they're fully just, you know, doing their thing, and then 0 being they're like completely flopping around. 0.5 would mean they're pretty tired. So I'm just gonna go keyboard Q, and we are just gonna call the tired state here. Do that, compile, and now if I press Q, we are... Alright, I did something really, really bad. We don't want to include self, and we don't want to include self. And we don't want to include self here either. Okay, so let's do this again. If we hit Q now, you can see that this character is yeah, when we start and stop moving, they're kind of wobbling around a bit. This is like really subtle. So this could be just as they're kind of beginning to get a bit tired. If they do a roll, they're going to be kind of flopping a bit funky. If we move back and forth, you can see it kind of flopping. If we were to, let's say, run out of stamina, or, you know, run out of stamina even more, then maybe it would, you know, start to look like this, where it's like really kind of floppy. Looks like they can't keep themselves upright at all, really. And the nice thing about this is that it affects all animations from this point. So if I like do some sword swings, you can see that they look really tired as well. All right. That sums up the 3 use cases that I said that we'd go through. I guess that is the physical animation Unreal Engine thingo. All that's left for me to do now is to edit this video and see if there was anything that I missed. And if there isn't anything that I missed, then thank you very much for watching. And as I mentioned earlier in the video, the first 1,000 people to click the link in the description can get 1 month free of Skillshare, and you can learn whatever you want. I would recommend learning video production. I know that Lily Singh has a really good course on making YouTube videos that would be really applicable to devlogs and that kind of stuff. You know, creating a story, how to present it, how to kind of market it and share it with everyone. So that's just another one that I recommend checking out. Lastly, but not leastly, Discord, Twitch, YouTube? No, we're on YouTube. Patreon, links in description. Thank you very much, and with that, I say goodbye. Goodbye.